I've been to New York one other time before, and it was while I was on tour with comedian Joe Dombrowski. I used to be his videographer and podcast producer, and on this tour stop, we were at Caroline's Comedy Club, which is no longer around. So usually when you're on a work trip, granted this was for a comedy show, you go to the hotel, and then you go to the comedy club, and then you go home. Fast forward a few years, I decide to go on my first ever solo trip to truly experience the city. With this in mind, my goal with this series is to inspire people to 1, solo travel if they haven't before, or encourage them to solo travel more, and 2, experience New York City. Whether you live there or not, there's so many new things to discover. So join me as I dive into the city. So it's pretty common for most people when packing for a trip that they need a couple days or even sometimes a couple weeks. For me, I just need a couple hours. So day of, that's when I decided to pack. And even leading up to this trip, I was out until very late. I had gone to the last day of the Puyallup Fair, and I feel like that's where the journey actually begins. So I'm with my friends in the beer garden at the fair, watching the Earth, Wind & Fire cover band, when this guy approaches us and says he has 2 front-of-the-line tickets to the Extreme Scream ride. And me personally, I'm a huge scaredy cat when it comes to heights. It's actually probably one of my biggest fears behind spiders. And I decided to say yes. No one else in the group except one other person decided to go on the ride with me. And it was definitely an extreme scream. I screamed all the way going up, all the way down, all the way in the middle, all the way around. And I was literally holding on to dear life. You know, I made it off the ride. Obviously, no one was injured. And I had a great time, even though my eyes were closed the majority of the time. But that was the intention I wanted to start this trip with, was just saying yes to things and overcoming some of my fears. Fast forward to the day of, I pack my clothes, have time to get brunch. I arrived to the airport only about an hour and a half beforehand. I know that's also a big thing where there's people that if their flight's at 7 p.m., they're getting to the airport at 12 p.m. I'm not that type of person. Otherwise, you're just kind of stuck waiting at your gate for hours. Everything's going pretty smooth. It's my time to go through the security. You do this whole thing, right? And I step outside of the x-ray machine or whatever. Then an alert comes on the screen that says groin anomaly. I've never seen this before, but basically this big yellow square on the screen shows up right where my groin is, and I have to be pulled aside. The thing that's a little weird, though, is they don't take you to another room. They basically just put you to the side of the line while people are still walking through, and they have to pat you down. So I see one of the TSA agents put on some blue gloves, and I'm like, whoa, buy me a drink first. They were not having that joke. So what happens is they have to pat you down, but it's interesting because they use the back of their hand and they don't miss any areas on you. It was more funny than embarrassing, but it was just an awkward experience to start off my trip with. So everything goes fine. I'm not wearing a belt. You know, there's nothing metal on me, so it was weird. Get on the flight, and I choose the window seat. I like to stare out the window. I always think of the Eminem bus scene where he's listening to music. That's kind of the vibe I get into. I'm so excited. I'm staring out the airplane the majority of the ride, and I missed the food and drinks multiple times, and the flight attendants are kind of getting annoyed because I'm kind of waving them down when they're already walking past. And then once or twice they come back, but I could tell that they're a little annoyed because they said they were trying to get my attention while I had my headphones on, but I didn't notice that. And then the captain says there's going to be some slight turbulence. I've seen videos online that say that turbulence isn't anything that bad and it's pretty common, so I'm never too worried about turbulence. But when I say this was some pretty crazy turbulence, it was pretty crazy. It was at least 20 to 30 minutes of straight turbulence of the plane going. It genuinely felt like a roller coaster. I was like, I just left the fair, but now I'm on another ride. So the flight from New York to Seattle is about 5 hours. Besides listening to music, I also decided to watch a movie. I decided to put on the movie Mother. And it's a pretty crazy movie and maybe not the best movie to watch on an airplane. Towards the end of the movie, there's a infant death. with these cult members tearing apart a kid. So that's, pretty intense to see on an airplane. The guy next to me is watching like Lord of the Rings, and meanwhile I'm watching this. So there's parts of the movie where I'm like, oh, should I turn my phone away or whatever? But, we land, everything's cool. Because there's a lot of construction happening at JFK, once you exit the airport, you can't actually Uber from there. You have to hop on an air train, which takes about 20 minutes, and then you could Uber from where that drops you off. For me, it's important that every new city I visit, that I can relate it to a song. So it becomes the new soundtrack of that city. The first time I went to New York, I was listening to Herbie Hancock, Watermelon Man. This second time, late at night, I'm Ubering to Brooklyn, Crown Heights, and I'm listening to Jay Electronica. He had dropped 3 or 4 projects that weekend, which is kind of unheard of because he's such a mysterious figure. It was cool that he released all this new content. He has an old song called Run and Hide that I really love, and you kind of had to listen to it on SoundCloud or some third party on YouTube, but now he finally uploaded the official version. So it was nice to listen to Run and Hide as I traveled to Brooklyn. I get to my friend's house who's hosting me. Shout out Augie and Russia. They were great hosts, and I felt very welcomed. By that time, it's 12 a.m., and I'm pretty hungry. In Seattle, most restaurants and bars are starting to close at that time, especially because I flew in on a Monday. But no, things in New York are open till around 4 a.m. So I go down the street and I go into a deli. So when I enter the deli, the employees, they were speaking a different language and talking pretty fast. So I didn't really understand what they were saying. They didn't really understand what I wanted. There are times where I was like, what do you recommend? And they would say, people like different things. So that's one thing I started to learn at delis in New York is if you ask for something, they need to know exactly what you want. They're not going to actually recommend you something. So there was a back and forth for about 5 minutes. It was a pretty awkward experience at 12 a.m. There's other customers coming in and out. They're having no issue whatsoever asking what they want from the deli. And it seems like the employees know them. So that's the cool thing about certain delis is that it seems like the customers and employees have built a relationship over time, and it's like something that you go to almost every day, so you get to know people. So I end up finally ordering a chicken sandwich, not exactly because I wanted it, it's just because that's what I think we finally were able to understand each other in saying. So I ended up with a chicken sandwich. It was pretty good. I go back to the apartment. I go to sleep around, let's say 3 a.m., wake up at 8 a.m., and I decide to film a podcast. My original vision was that every day I was going to film a podcast in New York. I even bought a list of travel gear that would make it easy to carry throughout the city. I record the first episode, it goes well, and then I decide within a couple hours that I just really wanted to explore and soak in the city. So I scrapped the podcast idea and just decided to take B-roll of things that I experienced. So I record the podcast on the roof. I go back down, everyone's awake, and then I ask Augie about going to a diner with me, and we come across Good Old Day Diner. This food is so good. This is one of the first places in Brooklyn that I explore, and it's an area called Bed-Stuy. And what's interesting is I've heard of so many of these neighborhoods and boroughs in New York just from listening to so much New York rap. So it was cool to be like, oh, I'm literally eating breakfast in Bed-Stuy. I've heard of Bed-Stuy. So this first day is really me trying to understand how to maneuver through New York. Augie's a really good tour guide. So after we go to breakfast, I walk with him to the subway. He kind of gives me a little bit of a rundown of how the subway works. We took the A train into Manhattan and go to Grace Church. I'm not really religious. I don't think Augie's that religious, but he is a fan of Bach, and I'm a fan of all music. This is something that Augie does at least once a week, where he goes into this church, and this church invites different organists from across the country to perform Bach for about 20 to 30 minutes. And it was pretty great. And at this point, I meet one of Augie's friends. He listens to the music with us, and then we leave and go to a bookstore. I'm not someone who really buys too many books from bookstores. Every once in a while I will. I usually buy like coffee table books for the studio. The only books that are really on my mind are by Charlemagne the God. Anytime I've gone to a Seattle bookstore to see if they have them in stock, they're never in stock. Going to New York, it was cool to see that there were multiple copies. So after the bookstore, we're walking around the city. One of the main ways of transportation throughout the city is walking, your 2 feet. And the next big thing I learned about New York is that there are very few bathrooms. So you become cognizant very quick of timing when you use the restroom. Whether you're going out to a restaurant or if you're already at home, you make sure you get your business handled. I thought it was a good idea to look up a bathroom map on Google Maps, and then the rest of my trip, my whole Google Maps trying to get places, I had to shuffle through all the different bathroom icons. A lot of them you did actually have to, buy a drink from or whatever, which is a weird feeling to like pay to go to the bathroom. But there's just so many people, so it kind of makes sense. But it's also maybe just install more bathrooms. The day starts to come to an end. I was looking at things on Eventbrite for things to do. Augie had some plans later that evening. So this was going to be the first time I was going to do something on my own in the city within the same day. And that's when I come across a flyer for this new venue called Tiny Cupboard, which is a place to play board games and video games. And they also have a comedy club in the venue as well. When I get there, I immediately run into this guy that seems kind of upset. He tells me that he just missed his comedy audition to perform at the club. It turns out this is his first time trying to perform comedy, and he feels like he blew it. So I was like, hey man, where'd you come from? And he said that he came from New Jersey, which is about an hour or so subway ride away. So I was like, hey man, I know you missed your audition, but let's go have a drink. Right off the bat, this is the first new person I met without any help from Augie or anything. So we go to the bar, we immediately strike a conversation up, and then we talk to the bartender, and the bartender says that there's an open mic an hour later. So he may have missed the audition, but he can still have an opportunity to perform. So I say, hey man, I'll be your first fan if you stick around. He ends up sticking around. We go to the comedy open mic, and it's in this very, very small room. Maybe has 10 chairs max in it. And no one shows up except a couple other open mic people. So I was the only one listening to these comics, but it felt very intimate and like the place I should be at, especially because I'm on the board of a nonprofit called Gates Open Washington. We give grants out to comedians and also a general arts grant. Plus, the first time I was in New York was with a comedian. So I honestly felt pretty at home. I didn't feel, there was no judgment coming from me that it was a small space. Everyone does a pretty good job. I think he kills his set, especially first time ever performing. I thought he did great. This up-and-coming comedian's name is Mark. We get another drink, and then we start playing ping pong. Then this guy comes out of the bar, and I invite him to play ping pong with us, and his name is Makai. So we're all having a good time. Then they do one-on-one, and we're all talking, getting to know each other. I decided to meet some more people at this venue. Since it's already becoming so easy and people are outgoing, I meet some other people, and one of these people I met was named Bridge. What ends up happening is Mark, Makai, Bridge, and I end up hanging out the entire week. Mark is from New Jersey, Makai is from Brooklyn in Bed-Stuy, and Bridge is kind of on this like self-discovery road trip, and one of her stops was in New York. So we all have these different backgrounds, and we all come together to become friends, and it was just very magical. So as Tiny Cupboard starts to close for the night, my new friends and I decide to go find another bar. At this point, it's probably around 2 a.m., and we go into this bar called All Night Skate. Bartenders are great, the people are all nice, and it's not until like 30 minutes to an hour into being at this bar that we realize that it's a gay bar. Nothing against gay bars, and honestly, being in this specific bar was another high note of this trip. I also noticed another difference compared to Seattle, which also has gay bars. So as welcoming and open of a city as Seattle portrays itself to be, I feel that there are so many lines drawn in the sand. You're either in this group or you're in that group. You either like this activity or you like that activity. And then you kind of build your personality based off that. So I'm with these people with completely different backgrounds, and we're at this bar, and there is no divide or anything whatsoever. We all end up having a great time getting along with people from another community. This one group of friends that we met, they were all dressed up in like angel outfits, and we were asking what the occasion was, and they were saying that it was the rapture. So it was funny that the first night I'm there, I go to a church in the afternoon. That evening, I find people that are like kind of poking fun at the rapture. So it was just, there were so many weird like coincidences and full circle moments, even in the first night. So by day one, I feel very excited. You know, people are so outgoing. It was such an easy place to meet new people. I never felt rejected by going up to someone to strike up a conversation. And that is something that's very important to me. I'm very outgoing and I'm very much a sharer. So to have that reciprocated meant everything. So day one was a success.